The lifeboats on the Titanic could take 1,178 people. The ship was certified to carry more than 3,300. Nobody hid that number. It was on the plans, it was in the paperwork, and it was signed. Because every part of this story that gets called an accident has a signature underneath it. Somebody drew the boats. Somebody approved the count. Somebody chose the speed. Somebody went to bed. This entry holds 6 decisions. The record explains 2. The 4 it does not are the more interesting ones. And the iceberg is not one of the 6. An iceberg does not decide anything. It has no opinion about how many boats you brought. Everything that turned a collision into a body count was settled months earlier, on land, by people holding pens. None of the 6 went wrong because the sea is dangerous. They went wrong because a schedule written for a smaller ship was never rewritten. Decision 1 belongs to a man called Alexander Carlisle. He was the designer at the shipyard that built her, and he drew the davits. A davit is the crane that swings a lifeboat out over the side, and Carlisle drew his to hold 48 boats, 3 to a davit. Then, in May of 1911, he signed off on 16. 20 went to sea. The frames that could have carried 48 stood on that deck for the whole crossing, holding 20, and they were not a secret from anyone. You could count them from the promenade. Which raises a fair question. If the designer wanted 48 and the owners wanted 16, who was the referee? The Board of Trade. And the Board of Trade had a rule. The rule was set in 1886 and restated in 1894. It sorted ships by tonnage, and the top of the scale read, vessels of 10,000 tons or more. Those ships needed 16 lifeboats. Titanic measured 46,328 tons. She was 4.5 times the largest ship that Rule had ever imagined, and there was no rung above her, so 16 boats was the legal answer for 10,000 tons and the legal answer for 46,000. The scale had run out 18 years before she was launched, and nobody had gone back to add a line to it. That is the first thing this entry wants you to notice. The paperwork was not broken. It was current, it was followed, and it was 18 years out of date. So the boats were decided before she ever left Southampton. The next 2 decisions were taken at sea in the last 12 hours, and only one of them has anybody's name on it. Through the 14th of April, her wireless operators took ice messages all day. Pack ice, field ice, icebergs, and plenty of them. And when the lookouts finally saw one, the ship was making 22 knots. That is very close to everything she had. And there is no mystery in that one, which is exactly why it counts. Liners kept their speed. A ship that arrived late was a ship that lost passengers. Ice was a thing you posted lookouts for, rather than a thing you slowed down for. And every captain on that route was doing the same. It was an ordinary decision, made the ordinary way. Ordinary is what makes it a decision instead of an accident. Decision 4 is the one I cannot finish for you. At 9:52 that night, a ship called the Mesaba sent this, word for word. Saw much heavy pack ice and great number large icebergs. Also, field ice. That message described the exact patch of water Titanic was steaming into. Of everything received that day, it is the closest to a map. And nobody signed for it. The operator who took it did not survive the night. The officers who did survive could not remember ever seeing it. There is no note, no logline, no initial in a margin. Nothing. Here is why that is less strange than it sounds. The men at the wireless set were not ship's officers. They worked for the Marconi Company, and their job that evening was a backlog of passengers' personal messages going out to Newfoundland. An ice warning arriving in the middle of that was not an alarm going off. It was another sheet of paper on a busy desk. At no point in that chain of command did anyone say, "Hang on, are we sure?" We do not know whether the bridge ever held that piece of paper. That is the whole answer. And it is not a cliffhanger. It stays on the board. There was another ship near enough to help, and she was already stopped. The Californian had shut down for the night in the same ice field. She had a wireless set. She had one man to work it, and his name was Cyril Evans. And at 5 to 11, Evans did the thing everybody wishes somebody had done. He cut in on Titanic's set to tell her they were stopped and surrounded by ice. He got back 3 letters, D, D, D. In the trade, that means stop transmitting, and the man sending it, Jack Phillips, was in the middle of his passenger backlog. What he meant, and what every operator on that ocean would have read, was, "Shut up, I am working Cape Race." 35 minutes later, Evans switched his set off and went to bed. 10 minutes after that, on the other ship, the lookouts rang the bell. 10 minutes. For the rest of that night, the closest ship in the Atlantic had a working radio and nobody sitting in front of it. And I want to be careful with this one, because the cheap version blames the man in the chair. He worked the hours he was given. The decision that mattered was taken by whoever decided that one operator was enough for a ship at sea. And that person does not appear in the record either. Decision 6 happened on the boat deck itself, and it happened twice, differently, on the same ship at the same time. The order was women and children. 2 officers heard it. On the starboard side, Murdoch read it as women and children first, and when no more women were waiting, he let men climb in. On the port side, Lightoller read it as women and children only, and when no more women were waiting, he sent the boat down as it was. Same 3 words, same night. 2 readings, 30 feet apart, and empty seats going down one side of a ship that did not have enough of them. Nobody signed that one either. It was 3 words, and 3 words is not a procedure. 2,208 people sailed on her. About 1,500 of them did not get off, and the estimates still vary. Every one of the 6 decisions above was taken by somebody who would never meet a single one of them, months earlier or hours earlier, in a room with better light. 48 boats became 20. A rule for 10,000 tons carried 46,000. 22 knots through ice. A warning nobody signed for. 1 operator with a bedtime. 3 words, 2 readings, entry number 4, 6 decisions in, 2 deliberate out. Filed under a schedule. One last thing. You have heard that the lookouts had no binoculars because an officer walked off at Southampton with the key to the locker in his pocket. His name was David Blair, and he did take a key. The locker that key opened held the crow's nest telephone, and it was left open anyway. The glasses were most likely sitting in the cabin Blair had just vacated, the one the new second officer moved into that same week. So the key is not the reason. The reason is that nobody went and fetched them, and fetching them was not on anybody's list. At the inquiry, they asked the lookout who saw the iceberg, Fred Fleet, whether glasses would have helped. He said they could have seen it a bit sooner. They asked him how much sooner. He said, enough to get out of the way. In the next entry, the record and the story disagree again, and the record is the dollar one. It is also the one with names in it. Subscribe and the Almanac stays open. The next one is on your screen now.